Well, good day, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us at a fantastic town hall session where we have the opportunity to bring a remarkable and interesting company forward for our audience to ask questions about where the company is, where it's going, and what the highlights are in the current day and quarter. So I have the great pleasure today of introducing Jaguar Mining Incorporated. We have Vern Baker, who's CEO, and Jonathan Victor Hill, who is VP of Exploration. So we have two wonderful sides of the company here to join us. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
Excellent, excellent. As always, I'm going to gently step out of the way. I know you have a fantastic presentation for our audience. I will encourage everyone who's joining us from around the world to let us know where you're calling in from so that we can interact as a community, and also that, of course, your questions are welcome. So please put the questions into the Q&A column, and as the presentation winds down, we'll move into a great back and forth session with Vern and Jonathan. Gentlemen, I'll leave it to you, and I'll see you on the other side of the presentation.
Thank you, Mark. As the CEO of Jaguar, I'm kind of delighted to be able to talk with you guys about where we're at right now, having concluded the first half of 2021, which was a reasonably tough period of time, predominantly due to the pandemic. As we go through today, obviously there'll be some forward-looking statements and such, but predominantly we're going to talk about what we've done for the quarter and for the first half of the year. John is going to bring to you kind of where we're at with some of we see very opportunistic exploration plays. We retain our focus on being sustainable in our production level, responsible in how we do it, and at sustainable levels. And so while that remains a focus, the first part of the year, we were actually a bit short of the performance we originally expected. Again, predominantly driven by the pandemic. You can see here in comparing the second quarter of this year to the prior year's second quarter, we actually stayed pretty consistent on tons produced. Where we saw our difficulties ended up being on grade, and predominantly because of the issues that we had within the mines. Much of our effort ended up being focused in higher levels in the mine, which tend to be lower grade, and so we saw a resultant impact from that in this year's performance, this quarter's performance is specifically. We started the first week of this second quarter started with the highest numbers of people both infected and being quarantined for that, as well as people being quarantined because of various risk factors, age, health, and a couple other components that we have in there. So while we struggled, in many ways, we were able to maintain the tonnage production levels, as I said, with some reduction in grade due to where we were mining. We were pleased, it doesn't show it here, but we were pleased that we recuperated from our lows of the first quarter, where we got hit by the pandemic growing on us fast and significantly here in Brazil and at our operations. We felt by the second quarter we kind of stabilized around understanding we had lots of people off and how we would deal with it, and we felt we were able to deal pretty well. Total meters of development, which are always a very good leading indicator for us, are less than 50 meters off from what we did the quarter a year before. So we retained a strong focus on keeping our development going because that's what's positioning us for the future. A little bit less on diamond drilling, and that specifically came about because we had to shut down our third parties. Right at the end of the first quarter and the beginning of this quarter, we shut down our third-party drillers, basically at the request of local communities, because many of those drillers come in from outside. And at the levels of impact we were seeing from the pandemic, our communities didn't want any extra people within the communities that didn't have to be there. So we had about 6 weeks before we were able to fire back up. So we're actually pretty pleased with the amount of drilling we were able to get done across the operations. This kind of shows that production profile over the last year and a half, really. And you see those reductions in both of our mines that happened in the first half of this year. Again, reflected very clearly in the reduced grade as being kind of the predominant impact on what drove that number down. Again, we believe, and we're forecasting, that we'll actually be returning very close to our 25,000 ounces per quarter for the second half of this year. Our current forecast, including all aspects of what's going on, is for 48,000 ounces in the second half of the year in total. So a big portion of that come with the recuperation and grade as we move back into better grade areas for this second half of the year. Kind of a key thing for us as an organization is our whole environmental and sustainable prospects, right? Because we can't do the things we want to do, which include growing our organization significantly, without the support of our communities, the local governments here in Minas Gerais, and the overall systems that support the mining industry. So we continue to have we feel, very good presence here. It was reflected to us. We'll talk a little bit about the coronavirus in a future slide, but our team worked very closely with the local communities. And actually, since we put out our last press release, that team was able to get with the local communities and to have them provide the vaccines to our sites. So we currently have vaccinated well over half of all the people at our sites. In fact, 2 of our sites have over 90% of all the people on them vaccinated. And we're working on our 3rd site. So we're really pleased. That's occurred within the last week. We were able to do that because of great relationships with the local both governments and healthcare systems, and it really helps to ease the worries of our people, and certainly of our whole organization, on our ability to return to, I don't know there will ever be what the new normal will be, but to move out of the pandemic stage and into whatever the next stage is, which for us includes sustainable levels of production. That coronavirus, as I mentioned, we got on this as of this week. We actually have spent 1 year and 4 months with our coronavirus response plan and team working. A lot of effort into working with the local governments and healthcare systems. Lots of different protocols. We've begun easing those off over the last month, really, and they should ease pretty quickly now that our levels of vaccination are getting really pretty high within our organization, as well as within Brazil as a total. So again, we feel we began our recovery in the second quarter of the year. This quarter, we should pretty much be back on track with production, and the following quarter 4. Like I said, we're projecting about 48,000 ounces of production in the second half of the year right now. Now, we believe we have a great asset base. We have the Turmalina mine, which is located, we'll see a map later but is located in the western part of the Iron Quad. Operating, good solid organization there. Again, we have quite a bit more processing capacity than we currently have production capacity coming from the mines. So that mine runs from about 1,000 to 1,100 tons per day with a 2,000 ton per day plant. So a lot of underutilized capacity, which we're looking to fill through our exploration program. Our Pilar mine feeds our Cayetay plant. Again, we have a bit of a mismatch in that the Pilar mine runs about 1,300 tons a day of production, and the plant can handle about 2,000 tons per day. So again, a lot of opportunity there. We see we actually have several exploration targets, both within our mine and near the Cayete plant, that we think will allow us to better utilize that capacity over the next several years. And the Paciencia and the Hoxa Grande are two different mining areas that have been shut down, one for about 4 years and one for about 9 years. But at Paciencia, we have a third plant. So we have a third 2,000 ton per day plant, of which currently is on care and maintenance. And we're doing the work to expand the resources so we can build a reserve to fill that in multiple ways. We're looking at the original resource bases that were in the area, and as well, we're looking at, we have a joint venture with a company called Iamgold, which basically within eyesight of our plant, we have some great prospects that the exploration team is working on. The Hoxa Grande is a mine very close to our Cayete plant. It operated until a few years ago. There's still some resource there and a lot of opportunity. So again, our exploration team is looking at how do we put together an adequate resource to build an adequate reserve to reopen and potentially feed additional tonnage through the Cayete plant. Of course, we've already talked that exploration success we think is pretty key, and we're pretty happy with what we've seen with our preliminary work we've done on our exploration plays. John is going to be presenting in a little bit. He has several slides to talk about the exploration, where we're going with it. But we see some three very good, basically new properties are the Cahega Brandao, which is within 5 kilometers of our Cayete plant, the Zona Basal, which is about in a straight line about 5 kilometers from the Turmalina plant, and the Fina prospect, which is currently, we already have resources on it. We're expanding and developing them, but it is about 1 kilometer from our Turmalina mine. So within the Iron Quadrangle, we think we have a great opportunity for organic growth. And we think as an organization with good operations of our 2 mines, we're going to be able to fund the exploration and that organic growth to really build our company over the next several years. So this is just a picture of our assets. So you can, we're located in Minas Gerais in Brazil, kind of the oldest gold mining district, probably in Brazil for sure, maybe in South America. Well over 300 years of continuous gold production has come out of this district. Where we're positioned, you see the red boxes. Those kind of indicate key areas. To the left or to the west is the Turmalina. In the center is where we have both the Paciencia plant, which includes a certain amount of ground from Iamgold we're currently exploring as well. The Cahega Brandao and Cayete area, where we both operate a plant and are doing an exploration program. And then the Pilar area, where we're running the mine and continuing the exploration to develop ongoing and growing resources and reserves. So I'm going to hand it to John so he can talk to you about drilling and what we've been seeing in our programs. John?
Great, thanks, Bag. Hi, everybody. Really briefly looking backwards, the Jaguar story has been producing enough resources and reserves in our 2 operational areas to give us a good runway so that we can sustain production over the longer term, the 4 to 5 year sort of period, while we ramp up our contiguous or our brownfields type programs within that portfolio that was on the previous slide. Clearly, the focus is in the Iron Quad. There's a good reason for that. It's a very well endowed jurisdiction, lots of upside potential, and very little modern systematic exploration. Moving back to this particular slide, this is really just some highlights of drilling that we've done over the past 18 months which will inform our next technical report in early next year. Just to show that the resource and reserve base in our operations is solid. We're continuing to hit intersections that are equivalent to what we've seen historically, and we work really to replace depletion on an annualized basis and maintain a buffer of 3 to 4 years of reserves ahead of us, so that we can reduce the sort of risks associated with underground mining, providing more flexibility, mining areas, etc. So that's been ongoing. What's really exciting is that we've hit some good zones in our ore body C Central, which is higher up in the mine, which talks to the sort of the grade issue that we've seen at Turmalina, where during COVID we've concentrated higher in the mine because we couldn't access the lower levels, and we are seeing some better grades ahead of us in shallower levels in the mine there at Turmalina. Moving to our Pilar operation, similar story. These are just some intercepts that will be what we're currently modeling up to include in our next technical report, as I've mentioned, early next year. This is just another view of Turmalina and Pilar, showing that our exploration and our resource reserve infill drilling is on track, and we're certainly confident that our next resource reserve publication in early next year will demonstrate replacement of depletion over the past 2 years, and maintain that buffer of 3 to 4 years of reserves and resources ahead of us. Having that in our hands, we can now turn to our portfolio of exploration, near mine exploration, which has been really not addressed in the previous 2 or 3 years due to the fact we've concentrated on the in mine stability and drilling programs. So late last year, we enhanced our geological teams. We now have a team of 73 people working across the portfolio. Earlier this year, we announced 2 early discoveries related to those programs, Jaguar Down and at Zona Basal. At the moment, we're at both of those projects. We're gearing up to return to define resources at both of those, initial resources at both of those areas, and for inclusion in that next publication of resources and reserves in early next year. So you'll see from both of those areas we have got good economic intercepts, and we're building resources, oxides and deeper sulfides at both areas. The important thing again to highlight is the fact that we have this excess plant capacity to leverage. So any discovery, no matter what size it is, we have to start small and grow, but we can access and develop those resources much faster. We don't need to produce. We don't need to provide and construct plants to feed that material too. So that's very, very important to highlight. Just a little bit more detail on Jaguar Down. You will recall it was a greenfields generated project. We targeted a regional fold structure that was identified from generative work. We defined a strong golden soil anomaly. Right on top of that anomaly, last year, we got some interesting auger drilling and trenching results, which we followed up. To now, we've generated a long strike length of oxide mineralization, which, like I said, we're bringing into resources in the next months. And we've recently highlighted a structurally controlled sulfide intersection of 4.63 grams per ton over 12 meters, which demonstrates that the 500-600 meters of strike that we've already targeted on a much bigger structure has potential to expand at depth with this theme of plunge persistent structurally controlled mineralization. Just some illustrative sections. The oxides very consistent at about a 1 gram average grade at a cutoff of about 0.3, 0.4 grams per ton. We see a modest but important fast track opportunity here on the oxide deposit. And once again, we're now chasing this mineralization to depth. Now we're understanding more about the structural context of these deposits. This is a very complex geological environment, very simplified on this section, but we're talking about a regional fold structure with parasitic folds along the limbs of this regional structure. Within the anticlines and synforms of this structure, we're finding higher and thicker grade intersections, which we can now define in a plunge basis. And our next phases of drilling, which will kick off over the next months, will target these things down to depth. So I look forward to presenting more information on this particular project going forward. Moving to Zona Basal, this is once again a very, very close but exciting opportunity for us to the Turmalina operation. We generated a very, very strong gold in soil anomaly, over 1 kilometer in strike length, a couple of 100 meters wide. On this particular slide, the large red area reflects the 100 ppb gold in soil contour. The blue is really a contour of the silver geochemistry, which also demonstrates the extent of mineralization potential in the area. And we're gearing up now to drill a initial resource starting next month, a 6,000 meter RC drill program, which you'll see on the bottom slide there, aimed at generating, focusing on the top 50 meters of this area of about 1 kilometer in strike, 200 meters in width, and about 40 to 50 meters in depth to generate an initial resource there. So we're kicking that program off early in August, and from there we plan to build a resource and publish early next year if all things go according to plan. The other thing on this map, just to highlight, is the bottom right hand image. There's 2 stars, one showing where the Turmalina plant is, the other the finer deposit and the Zona Basal. They're all very close to that Turmalina plant where we have excess capacity. This is just cross section showing really what the exploration and development thesis is here. Zona Basal, we're looking at an extensive oxide blanket initially, and from that we will target higher grade sulfide or potential underground opportunities at depth. But this needs a little bit more work to find exactly where the targets are, which are a little bit more discrete and need more drilling definition to target to depth. This is moving to our exciting Iamgold joint venture areas. This is an extensive area close to our Paciencia plant, which is on care and maintenance. We've been working there for just under a year. We've done all the preliminary work required to generate our initial drill targets. Drilling will commence at the end of August. It's a little bit delayed, COVID-related delays, and that are now largely behind us as it stands. What we've done in this area is a very extensive airborne high-resolution drone magnetic survey. We've followed it up with on-the-ground geochemistry. We've generated a lot of targets associated with banded iron formation lithologies that are structurally complicated with folding and shearing. We have multiple kilometers of potential outcrop and gold and soil anomalies, which we're now going to start drilling. We've got something like 38 targets along that structure that we're going to start picking off at over the next few months. What's also important is the geology in this area. It's right in the center of the iron quad. The same geological sequences that host the big deposits have been delineated in this tenement package. The big deposits, Anglo Gold are currently operating the Jaguar mine of theirs, and we have our Correga Brown Down, we have our Pilar, our Turmalina deposits, all in the same geological context, and the potential in these Archean terrains is really for structurally controlled, plunge persistent deposits that go to great depth, and that's what we're really focusing on at the moment in demonstrating the potential of that. So really, in a nutshell, we've got 6 diamond drill rigs working across the organization as we speak, 2 underground at our Pilar operation, 1 underground at Turmalina, and 3 on surface, 2 at Corega Brown Down, and 1 at our finer and Zona Basal deposits. We're going to roll out a 6,000 meter RC drilling program at Zona Basal starting next month, and also we have a 7th rig, which is a rig we purchased for the Iamgold joint venture area. That's being commissioned at the moment, and we're going to start drilling there a series of targets that have been generated there. In terms of that JV, it's a 60% earn-in over 4 years, $6 million expenditure to earn 60%. In our first year, we've spent that about $700,000, so we're within the required expenditure of that joint venture agreement, and we're really expanding our focus in that area in the second half of this year to generate the next resources to leverage that more capacity at our Pacienza plant. I think that's time to hand back to Bake now to just quickly wrap things up, talk about the capital structure, and we'll take any questions after that.
Thanks, John. Just for most of us, probably just a reminder, but we're pretty tightly held on the stock market. Again, with Eric Sprott, just short of 50% ownership of what we have, and then in our top 6 shareholders controlling just short of 80% of the shares. Currently, we have good cash in the bank. Both our mines are generating cash flow, and we think we have some great opportunities in front of us. Again, our overall as an organization, we want to run sustainable mines with sustainable resources and reserves. And then on top of that, we want to start growing those resources and reserves, both in the mines for potential increases in performance and on new projects. We have a tremendous amount of unused capacity within the iron quad to handle a lot more tons than we're currently handling and produce a lot more gold than we're currently producing. We think we've got some great ground to develop those resources and reserves on. And truly, that's how you build a good, solid company. You build strong resources and reserves. You start putting them in a plant, and you generate those dollars, which then lead us to be able to do even more in the future. So we're very comfortable with where we're at as far as money in the bank and the ability of our mines to fund everything that we want to do as we go forward. John's highlighted our exploration stuff. We think that'll be a real driver of opportunity for us as an organization. So again, I'm going to reiterate, we're going to build a strong foundation of resources that allows us to build reserves that can fill that unused plant capacity we have. And we're going to do that by funding it ourselves through the good, solid production of our 2 operating mines. We suspended our guidance. We were significantly impacted by the pandemic in the first couple quarters. We think we're going to be back on track for sustainable levels of production, basically from here on out. We look to increase our life of mine by doing the drilling that allows us to build resources and reserves and will allow us to grow in the future. We continue to look for synergistic mergers and acquisitions. There's always some stuff out there. It's really whether we can find something we really think delivers enough value to make it worth doing something. We'll continue to be focused on bringing some good exploration results to play on our good targets and seeing more ounces because of that. And we're retaining our focus on Brazil. And currently we have a lot of leverage on our position here in the Iron Quad. So that's it for our presentation. And if there's any questions, we would love to address them.
Gentlemen, thank you very much, both Vern and John. Appreciate the walkthrough and the insights, especially coming through what the world has come through to see where your company is and how you're positioned and what the plan is moving forward. So with great respect, we have the opportunity, as you mentioned, to take some questions from the audience, and they're certainly piling up here, which often happens when we get this sort of inside view. So appreciate that from Jaguar Mining. We're going to start with a question that's fairly structured around the potential of where things go from here. We have a question saying, can you please talk about any metallurgical programs that went on for FINA to potentially develop this into production?
Okay, so at FINA, we've started and are continuing to do some metallurgical test work. The material at FINA is what we would call refractory, meaning it doesn't easily recover through direct cyanidization of the ore. So we're currently looking at the processes because we have actually the space and the capacity to look at as a potential flotation project. So we would be milling it, floating a concentrate off of it, and then we're looking at whether we do intense leaching of that concentrate or if we would sell that concentrate. So those programs are still going on and show, potential for us to recover plus 85% of the gold in our FINA deposit. So we're pretty pleased. Certainly the economics are still there for us mining that prospect. Making sure we do it right is, the difference between whether we're going to be seeing 87 or 85% recovery, but that 2% can make a lot of money for us in the future. So we're continuing to work on that, and that's where we see that project going.
Great. Thank you, Vern. Next question here. What can we expect in terms of growing and expanding the existing gold reserves and resources, and where will the biggest contribution be coming from?
We're going to see contributions probably from a whole bunch of places. We have done enough drilling in our mines that we expect our resources and reserves to expand in both mines. For us to be able to increase production in those mines, we of course need new mining areas. And so a lot of our exploration has been focused on expanding, either by allowing us to go horizontally or even to move back up vertically into areas that weren't mined in the past. So both mines are looking at doing that. Don't see either of the current underground mines producing 2,000 tons a day each. Could happen, and we have some targets looking for, but that's probably not where the biggest tonnage contribution would be. Pilar does look like it could potentially push into the 1,500 ton per day range pretty easily, and Turmalina, depending upon what we find, could go up into the 1,300 or 1,400 ton per day area. The big additions we're going to see is being able to bring on things like FINA. The zona, in a nearer term basis, the Zona Basals and Cahega Brandal shows some real opportunity to increase production through basically material right now that's basically on the surface and fully oxidized. So recovery tends to be pretty straightforward with that type of material, and it's not really complicated to get into. The scaling those big is, of course, very permit driven, and so permits end up being something we're looking at. But we would see over the next couple of years able to generate significant increases in the tonnage we're putting through our plants, both the Cayete and the Turmalina plants. The Paciencia plant, we are both looking at prior existing resources that were mined in the past and to see if we can do something to develop them to a level that they make sense for opening up that that property again, or the plant itself,
Yep.
as well as the kind of baseline exploration on the ground that's adjacent to it. Really, if you look at it on a big scale, to fill those plants, because of permitting and such, and exploration, probably about a 5-year project,
Okay.
5+ year project to fill them. Now, when I say full, we're talking about going from 2,300 or 2,400 tons a day to 6,000 plus tons a day.
Okay.
So pretty good opportunity for growth.
Absolutely. And it's hard to imagine a company pivoting during the time of a pandemic at this level. And I understand it's everything comes down to jurisdiction, from what I understand. And working in Brazil, I had the great pleasure of traveling through the Pantanal region. Amazing culture, amazing people. But I am curious to hear from your perspective at the company, what it's been like to work in that jurisdiction through the pandemic. And a key question here is, can you comment on the overall rate and state of the COVID vaccinations as it pertains to Minas Gerais and the mines?
Okay, so we'll take the last question first. The vaccination rates in Minas Gerais are over 50% now.
Okay.
So, and actually they're fairly significantly over 50% as of now. At our mines, specifically at our mines, we're looking at vaccination rates. I believe we're approaching 60% of all of our people, including third parties at our properties, have been vaccinated. Again, that's site specific. At Pilar, over 90% of our people and our third parties that work there have been vaccinated. At the Cayete plant, we're probably at about 85%. And then at Turmalina, I believe we're at about 25% vaccination. Okay. So we have a couple sites where really the virus itself is probably no longer an issue. Third one, we still have some vaccination to go. As far as the district, the hospitalizations have gone down at a very good pace. We're below 50% occupancy in our hospitals again. Okay. Where the pressure, the stress that was here at the end of March and in the early April was incredible amount of stress. You probably feel it when you walked outside. Wow. That's really gone. Really gone. People are coming back to normal. All the behaviors are back to normal.
Great.
Still wearing masks. Most people are still wearing masks, but that probably will start disappearing over the next month.
Okay. Evolution. Thank you very much for that.
And the first question there, I got so busy on that one, was more about what it's like to work in Brazil, or at least in Minas Gerais and Belo Horizonte. Well, it's nice enough here that John has stayed for about 20 years. North Americans right now are experiencing summer. We're in the middle of winter, and it got down to 40 degrees yesterday, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And boy, the Brazilians were really complaining about how deadly cold it was. But it's pretty comfortable for anybody who's lived in North America before.
All relative.
Yes. The communities we work in, I don't know that I've ever been in a mining company that's had any better relationships with the local communities that we participate in. We have some fantastic people in our governance and social responsibility groups who work with those people, but truly that's why our vaccination rates have moved up so rapidly recently, is that good connections with people, good support. We support the communities, and they've really supported us back. Probably as good a place as I've seen on a regulatory basis to work. I've worked in Canada, many places in Canada, a whole bunch of places in the United States, Argentina, and now Brazil. I would say right now, on a regulatory basis, this is the best one I've seen of all.
Good to know. Very interactive and interdependent from the sounds of it. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Next question, moving over to dividends here. Vern, will the current dividend be sustained, and what catalyst might prompt you to increase dividends?
Well, our dividends are currently determined each quarter by the board. So the board will be deciding when we approve the release of our financials for the second quarter, whether we're going to continue the dividend. I personally like us paying, one of the things we want is we want people that are associated with our organization to prosper. That includes the shareholders. And we think that the dividend is a good thing to do. What could change that is if we have a good enough prospect to invest the money in, we may move money back into investing in the ground. We haven't had the projects to date to do it. So that could happen. As long as we can retain a good solid cash balance in the bank, though, we would like to continue paying the dividend.
Great. Thank you for that, Vern. Moving on to targets and production territories here, can you say which targets are priority for production and which targets do you believe have the largest potential at this point?
Largest potential I've seen in the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years as far as a gold prospect is the Cahiga-Brandao.
Okay.
It's got a major scale fold in the middle of a major scale gold district. It has anomalous gold, including high grade gold, along, I think we think about 3 kilometers of strike, which is very highly anomalous in everything, not just gold, every other indicator mineral. And, we drilled our first pass of drilling there. And I think all but one hole hit some kind of significant anomalous gold. Might have been 5 meters at half a gram, but that's a pretty anomalous thing structurally to find on your first pass. And it went as high as 4 or 5 grams over close to 10 meters, right? We see really significant stuff for a first pass of drilling. So right now we're trying to really put together the information we've learned there. Short-term basis, Zona Basal and Fina show great promise. Fina is going to be close to 500,000 ounces of resource, probably by next year when we sum up the work we're doing this year on it, with potential as it goes down and expands to the sides to get quite a bit bigger. So a real nice contributor to the future of the Turmalina project property. And Zona Basal, we're going to know in a couple months after we do this, it looks good enough that we're doing grid drilling. And basically that grid's going to tell us if we have something to start a project on for the oxides that are basically, literally right at the surface. So we're pretty excited about some of those things.
Great. Thank you for that. I'd love to throw a question to Jonathan as VP of Exploration. John, just curious, again, in that region of the world compared to other jurisdictions, northern BC, other parts of Canada, Greenland, just tell me a bit about maybe the top 3 reasons from an exploration perspective about the beauty and opportunity in the Brazilian region.
So, I hope people can hear me. The internet seems to be breaking up a bit here, but essentially the jurisdiction is the address geologically. The Iron Quad is the 3rd most endowed Archean greenstone belt of its type, only after the Yilgarn and the Abitibi in Canada.
Yes.
But it hasn't seen anything like that level of exploration. You can work here all year round. We can attract very high quality geological and associated skill sets. But the main thing is the immaturity geologically. It's been held tightly by iron ore and major gold companies that are focused on near mine and in mine exploration. So the actual exposed greenstone belt that hasn't seen, it's clearly endowed. There's 300 years of historical occurrences. There's pretty much anomalous gold or some form of old workings over that, relating to that period of time across our entire portfolio. And the other thing is, we're finding, extensions to greenstone belts that don't appear on recent maps right. in our tenements. So these are all exciting things that point to us focusing in our near mine environment, and then obviously from a business economic point of view, to have all that excess plant capacity, that gives us a 10-year head start on anybody else in terms of bringing those to any discovery to account. So that's really in a nutshell. Geological context, high potential for structurally controlled, plunge persistent, high grade mineralization.
I appreciate that, John. Thanks for the perspective from the exploration side. A question more, let's move over to the books and just curiosity, what level of confidence is there here, Vern, with the balance sheet in terms of handling your growth initiatives at this point in the juncture?
Well, 100%. Actually, we'd like to keep our cash balance in the 30 million or above range. And from what we see, we can basically do everything we want with cash flow. We're spending a lot of money on exploration. John told you we got 6 major rigs going. We got a very large team working. We're putting some money in it. We got a significant amount of development we're doing, so we have places to put those drills. We also, of course, have we're building a team. We expect to be building projects in the future. So we have money going into building the teams that can manage those projects, right? Start out as pre-feasibility projects, and pretty soon we hope they're development and mining projects in and of themselves. So right now it looks like our organization, at the sustainable levels of production we're targeting, which roughly 25,000 ounces a quarter, we can pay to move this company ahead. And it looks like bring capacity that was either already turning. There's always, you have to add, if you're going to go from 1,300 tons a day to 2,000 at a plant, you're going to have to put a little bit of money into it, even if it was originally targeted at 2,000. Over time, it gets adjusted. And to bring it back online will take a bit of money, but nothing outside the bounds of what we can handle. Okay. And the current projects that we see are all of a scale that are within the potential cash flow we expect to see from our operations. We'd love to get a project. I'd love to see Corrego Brandao blow out and be so big we got to borrow money to build it. But that's something we'll face in the future.
Okay, thank you for that, Vern. Let's get a little technical here. It's always fun to dig into this territory. Can you please comment on the large air drone geophysics study that you've undertaken?
No, that's a good question. We just covered something like 15,000 hectares with an airborne drone survey, which is basically a UAV that has a magnetic detector on it, and the alternative to that is a helicopter or a fixed wing survey. The terrain is quite rugged, and there's also people to consider, surface communities. Drones have no impact on the sort of surface environment, and this was a very ambitious. It's actually the biggest survey that ever done in South America of this nature. And it took about 4 months to do, and we got extremely positive results from it. Technically, our Australian consultants say that it's the quality of the data is exceptional, and so we're very pleased that we had the opportunity to do this survey, and at the 20% of the cost of an equivalent survey with a fixed wing aircraft, and much faster acquisition time. So it's really the future. We're certainly going to be doing more surveys of this nature. We haven't done it just over the Iamgold. The results that we're seeing at Corrego Brandao, Zona Basal, these are all attached to drone equivalent data that was acquired last year, and has allowed us to progress these projects really quickly and test these areas.
Beautiful. Great. Thank goodness for technology. Of course, I see it married with music and Morgan Freeman voicing the whole footage because that sounds super impressive. But thank you for the update on that.
Yeah.
Let's move over. And a question comes in asking, who is it that is exactly that you sell to smelters, end users? Do you sell at spot prices, contracted prices, or do you use the futures market?
We did not use the futures market. We actually contract the products we produce, which are electrowind product, but needs quite a bit of refining. We actually work with Iamgold, our another local gold producer, who produces a refined metal from that, and predominantly it's shipped to, I believe it's Brussels, it's Belgium. And I think we tend to go through Ormat is who we sell the gold through. We basically sell at spot.
Great. Thank you for that. Just in terms of some of the operations, the question comes, what is the host rock at Corrego Brando?
It's a mafic volcanic, but has some other exotic rocks. We're still trying to work out what they are. There's sort of a calcitic association, which would suggest that there was a sort of a banded iron formation with a carbonate facies associated with it. But it's mainly mafic volcanics at the moment that we've intercepted. Very iron rich and magnetic.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback there. Question here, in the best case scenario, when are you hoping to have the two operating plants working at full capacity?
Very best case, I would say, is probably 2024 sometime. That would be access to FINA. We fill up the Turmalina plant from that. I guess it could go better depending on Zona Basal and our results there, but probably best case for kind of current style of feed would be probably 2024. Time enough to get to FINA, get it developed, and put it into Turmalina, and probably add in increased production a bit at Pilar and add in something like our Hocha Grande. I mean, there's multiple deposits at Hocha Grande, and so we're looking at, which of those might make sense.
Okay.
So, that would, you could forecast. Forecast is not the right word. There is some potential for us to be kind of full out 4,000 plus tons a day in the year 2024.
Okay. Great perspective, bird's eye view. Thank you very much, Vern. Let's move from operations over to the market space. Can you tell me, do variations in the U.S. dollar and real exchange rate affect your profits very much?
Yes. And interestingly enough, what we saw with, there was a wild variation in the exchange rate last year. So when the exchange rate went very fast to a higher level, went from the mid fours to the mid fives. When we first saw that, it was kind of an immediate positive impact in that about 65% of our costs are basically in reais. A big portion is actually already denominated in the world, in the world market. So the portion that's in U.S. dollars, actually the cost went up on for us relative to our reais. But we saw an advantage. Most of that advantage has evaporated this year as every contract in the country, but certainly almost all the contracts we have factors in them for the exchange rate. So a lot of that has evaporated back out as prices were adjusted because of the exchange rate. We have a team constantly working on keeping our costs down, but that's it. Benefits us, price goes up. So, given a choice, I would have the price of the U.S. Gold in the U.S. dollar go up. That benefits us pretty quickly in the whole world market.
Okay, thank you very much, Vern. Continuing the market space here, and of course, the name Eric Sprott comes up from time to time in these sessions. Any way the company could do a share buyback, considering Eric Sprott is near 50% of all outstanding shares, given where the stock is right now?
have done it. We did it last year, but at the percentage, if we do much more share buyback, it starts having some impact. As he approaches that 50%, and right now, while we think we can kind of fully fund our everything we want, that's really probably, we think, a better place for us to be putting our funds than in share buyback, is to be putting it in the ground with exploration and growth projects.
Okay, thank you for that. We're looking at the clock here, just about a moment or so left. I always like to open the door at the end here, given the caliber of questions that come in from our audience, Vern and John. Anything that's come to mind that you want to share, or that's been triggered forefront of your mind that you want to leave us with today?
John, anything?
No, just watch this space.
We're, I like to reiterate, right? Tell you once, twice, three times. We have a good, solid team. We're in a great district, and we're gonna do a good job of operating our mines and funding the fantastic opportunity we see here with our infrastructure, with our properties, and with our people.
Well said, Vern. Thank you very much. I can say on behalf of our audience, we feel way more informed than at the beginning of this session. Thank you for bringing everything to the forefront. And as always, you can be guaranteed we'll be watching the company. And I absolutely look forward to speaking to both of you again soon. Thanks for your time today.